Hello everybody, I'm Mary Catherine and this is My Own Little House. Welcome to my channel. Today I'm going to be doing a little bit more quilting with you. Now I am not a quilter. I don't make queen size quilts and I never hand quilt. Oh, heaven forfend. But I do a little machine quilting and I like to do small quilts. I like to do things that are like a yard square or smaller. I think that that's more doable on my machine and not so overwhelming. And it allows me to get to other projects that I like. I'm not primarily a seamstress. So let me see. I've done different types of quilt blocks. I have done log cabin. This is all thanks to Kate Jackson, who is a fabulous quilter and got me thinking that maybe I could do this if I wanted to. So I did log cabin, and then I did wonky star. And I didn't do that for too long, and then I moved on to string pieced, which I've done quite a bit of. I feel like I'm forgetting something. Log cabin. Anyway, this last one that I'm starting on is just a scrappy quilt. Now some people do it as a color wash quilt where you have all of your reds and warm colors in one corner and you gradually wash it through various little squares down to the other corner, which is very blue and cool. I may try that. I don't know if my fabrics will work with that, but I'm going to get the block down first. So these are what the little blocks look like. Now these are currently 3.5 inches square. So when I put a 1/4 inch seam allowance, when I piece them all together and sew them together, then they'll be 3-inch squares. Now you'll notice that the little red center is not centered. And that's okay. This is yet another wonky quilt, and that's the only kind I can do, because ones that are carefully measured, you know, where you have to have 2.5-inch strips and you have to cut them all precisely and you have to turn them, it's not that I couldn't do that, I just don't think I would enjoy it. So here's another one. Here's that fun flamingo fabric that I love so much. Notice how what you're trying to do is get a contrast between the center square and the outside panels. So I will, the next thing I'll do is show you how I put one of these together. I currently have a number of stacks, 5 stacks, with I'm kind of starting to grade my colors a little bit from darkest to lightest, and I have 51 squares right now. I'm just kind of doing about 7 or 8 at a time when I feel like it, most mornings. I've been thinking about this block for years. The original person that Kate Jackson got this idea from, her name is Terry Rowland, and I will share the link to her tutorial for this quilt square or block or whatever you want to call it. It's going to have a lot of small blocks and it's going to take a whole lot of them, even just for a tiny tummy time mat. Okay, so let me show you how I do this. I'm here at my sewing machine and I have a little ruler here that I just have tucked right here with a little measuring tape down here. I have a bag of good size quilt scraps, but they're nice and wide, and these are the kind that I need. I don't need little teeny scraps for the outside panels of this. Probably won't use the bears, but there's some really fun fabrics in here. Boy, I like that one. There's a lot of fun fabrics. Okay, so let me show you how I'm going to do one of these little squares. So here's one of my favorite fabrics, and this has been folded in half. I really need it in 2 pieces, so I'm just going to go ahead and do this. I need this, these 2 pieces I've now cut, I need them to be about 4 inches long, generally. I will have a little bit of wastage on this, but it's a great way to use up scraps. These don't have to be identical, because this is another one of those squares where you trim it afterward with a cutting square, and yeah, you're good to go. Now I'm going to need, I've got 2 larger pieces. Those are going to go on the sides, and I need 2 smaller pieces, and they'll go, oops, here, and here. And so I'm going to need another piece in the middle that will be a nice contrast. Now let me see, I had something here. Boy, it'd be fun to put that, see if we can put that in the middle. Somehow like that. How about that? Okay, so the first thing I'm going to do is to sew this centerpiece to these two edge pieces, and then I'll sew the whole thing together. Again, these are not going to match up. I don't have to trim them perfectly now because I'm going to trim them later. Now you can chain piece this and do, I've gotten many squares ready, gotten all the little pieces in little stacks, and then gone through and chain piece these just to save time. Place these so that I have one nice straight line there. The other side will be wonky. That's all right. I'm using 1/4 inch seam allowance, just a teeny bit over. I just make sure that the edge, the raw edge of the fabric, is a little bit sticking over my presser foot. Okay, now I just love this fabric. I'm so thankful for my friend Pat, who gives me all of her scraps, and some of them are very generous sized pieces, and I'm really able to do a lot with them. Now I like to open up these little seam allowances in the middle. See how I've opened those up that way, and I'll do the same. Now if I want to cut this off, should have been more careful on how I placed that little flip-flop, but that's okay. All right, and now I'm gonna do the other side, making sure that this piece is facing me so I can get those raw those seam allowances opened up. Okay, now let's look at this. Now some of you out there may not know what I meant when I said, is it chains piecing? Looks like a piece of bunting coming off the back of my my sewing machine. Okay, so what I've done is I got a whole nice new stack of squares. Okay, these are these little blocks, not those up there, those are already done. But each one of these little stacks had 2 large pieces, 2 small pieces, and then a center contrasting piece. Now what I've done so far is I've taken from each little stack, block stack, I've taken 1 short piece plus the center piece and stitched those together in a long line. And now I've done all of them. I can also clip these off as I go along. It's just keeping the next one fed in, but you don't have to keep it in a long string the whole time. This is the spot where my cutting mat has cut all the way through. You can see my finger going in there. And so it kind of bubbles around that spot. So I'm trying to use the cutting mat over here. Now, as I've been doing 51 of these little squares, I kind of have a better feel about how to place my very first positioning of this ruler. So I want to make sure I leave a nice good sized border over here, about like that, and plenty at the top. On this one I'm leaving as much as I can at the top. As you see, I can't push that up any further really. Okay, and then I just flip it the opposite way, and I have this marked out at 4 inches. Okay, but I've got this little black dot right here, and I put that on there with a permanent marker, so that I know where this is the corner is. And then I line it going up here at 3.5, and I line it going over here at 3.5, and then I give it a good cut. Okay, now it looks much tidier, don't you think? I got ambitious tonight for supper and made my mother's quiche recipe. This is a store-bought pie crust, but I do have farm fresh eggs and milk, Swiss cheese, little green onions, bacon, and Black Forest ham, all in that lovely quiche. And now I just give it a little press with my craft iron. This is one of my favorite little sewing tools that I got. I don't like to iron clothing. I never iron my clothing. Isn't that terrible? Just don't care about the wrinkles, but I do iron when I sew. Now it's nice and crisp and flat. And looking over here at my stacks, I'd say this one probably falls into the medium as far as dark to light, kind of medium tones. Later on, I'll probably separate these into warm and cool on each one, but for now, I think I'll just leave them in these stacks. So that makes 52. Making progress. These are shampoo bars. This is lavender. This is tea tree. And this is lilac. There's a fan to help them cure faster, because I am in dire need of soap and shampoo bars at the market. I apologize for the fan noise over there. It's blowing on my soap. Anyway, I've got a long chain piece thing going on here. I'm attaching my center squares to my other outside squares. Nice long chain. I got carried away. And here's all my little stacks to be assembled. I've got some over there. I've got a few more over here. So today I'm going to get a whole bunch more blocks done. This is about, I think up here I've got about 65 maybe. So maybe I'll get another 20 today. Well, I finally got my final layout, and I'm pretty pleased with it. I'm sitting here webbing my quilt pieces. And let me explain to you what that means. And while I'm doing it, I'm watching The Last Homely Garden with Kate Jackson. Lovely channel. She's the one that inspired me to do all of this quilting that I've started to do. Now, how you do webbing, and those of you who quilt already know this. This may be a new thing to somebody. You use that continuous chain piecing method where you sew two pieces together, and then without cutting your string, you go straight into the next two pieces and the next two pieces. And so you end up with these pieces that are sewn together on this seam, but just joined loosely, and so these seams are not yet done, okay? But it does hold everything together. And the way you do it is you go get your stack of whatever row. I have 10 rows of these little blocks, and I got the first two stacks and kept them in order and made sure that if this block has seams that run this way, that this block beside it has its seams running perpendicular, so that these seams are not meeting right here. These seams are coming up against just solid fabric, okay? And it alternates as you go down. Seams here, fabric here. Uh-oh, what did I do? Now you see I messed this one up. And I didn't notice. I didn't notice when it was laid on the bed, and I didn't notice it when I sewed it together, and I just kept on sewing. Okay, and oh dear. Okay, so I didn't notice until I came to do my third row, and I started fine and came down here, and then I got here and I was like, oh no. Now, it's one thing just to snip these little threads, but to go back and unpick all of these, I just didn't want to do it. So I'm just having these three all have their seams together, but you can see these are offset, so they're not going to be too bulky. And then just went back to my other pattern. I hope that works, and so I hope that's the only spot that I mess up, and I'm going to try to be very attentive as I go along here. So I'm continuing to do this webbing, and I'm going to take my next block and I'm going to lay it over here, and then just sew that all the way down, and then do the next one, boom, boom, boom. And when I get all 100 blocks webbed together, I'll be able to hold it up and see the color wash again. And then I can go back and turn it and run the stitches the other way and sew up these open seams, and then it'll be all pieced together. But the nice thing about this method is you're less likely to mess up your blocks that you've so carefully arranged in their color wash. The other thing Terry Rowland said to do was to use a shorter stitch length. When you have small blocks like these are going to finish up at 3 inches square. And she just said having a slightly shorter stitch length, like I've moved mine from a 10 to a 12, gives you more stitches along this edge and holds it together better when they're this small. She also said when I get done with the piecing together that I need to run an edge stitch all the way around to keep some of these seams from unraveling on the end, which is a wise thing to do, especially with small blocks and lots of seams. All right, that was a morning of sewing, but I got it webbed, and then I got all of it sewn. I think this is the same orientation as it was on the bed. I did rearrange and put all my yellows in one spot after looking online at some of the color wash quilts, and they're all over the place as far as what kind of pattern you get. But I like the blue in one corner, red in the other, with the darkers in the corners and then working toward the lighter in the middle. But I did decide that I wanted all my goldy yellows kind of together, and then up here are the lighter ones that have a little bit more blue or pink. All my flamingos are up there. Anyway, I'm real pleased with it. And now we will do the quilt sandwich and we'll get it put together. Hey, Lucy. What are you doing today? Are you having any fun? Well, I just laid out my quilt top, and then I put my batting on top, and it sticks over, not really much. And then I laid down this baby blanket that I was planning to use as a backing. It's not big enough. It's a little bit short up there, but it's just way too short over here. I'm not going to cut off that much of my quilt. So I'm going to have to get some other fabric for this, and we'll go find something. Well, it's a good bit later, days and days later, and I did go find backing fabrics for some quilts. I finally just decided to go to my local craft store and their fabric department, and I found this fabric that is the one I chose for my color wash quilt. I mean, it's not, it's the best of the four that I found. This is a very lightweight flannel. I like that for a baby blanket. Let me see. This is also a lightweight flannel. And then I found these two. This one's pretty bold, but, and then we have this one, very sweet. So, I may do that in the future. I went on a Thursday when the fabric's on sale, but then they had these fabrics on sale for $2 a yard. That's the same price, I think, that they charge at the local thrift store for used fabric, remnants. So I just got a yard of each one of these for $2. I mean, that's great. So this has got me 4 more quilts where I don't have to worry about the backing fabric and how I'm going to get it. So I'm going to go ahead and put this on the back of my quilt. I've just finished machine quilting the sandwich, and I'm about to take it out, snip it off. Haven't done the binding yet. Here's the back. Now, I did just totally random, angular, just sewing along various edges of blocks on the front, not even thinking about any kind of a pattern. And so it just came out like this, which I think is fine. I am not very skilled, and I'm also not a perfectionist in this, in sewing especially. I really am not. So some of you really might need to shudder and look away. But anyway, that's what it's going to look like. I'm going to use this as the binding on the edge too. And of course the focus is all on the front, which is nice. It's over there on the sewing machine. I'm about to finish up. I think because I have plenty of this left now, even though I got a yard, I have plenty left over. So I'm going to make my binding out of this as well. And that way it'll just wrap around the front a little bit. I think I'll cut 5-inch binding strips. Yeah, I think I don't like a really big binding. My favorite one I did was the one that was the smallest, where it was barely showed. So we're going to give that a try. I now have a nice roll of binding that you see I've joined it at an angle there, which is cuts down on the bulk, and then I've pressed it so that it has a nice edge here. And now I'm going to start kind of in the middle of the side, one of the sides of my quilt. And I'll sew this binding on with a 1/4 inch, maybe a little more. I want to make sure I cover up all these various seams I've got with a little bit of a seam allowance, and then and leave a big old joining area. You're supposed to leave an overlap that is the same distance as the width of your binding. So this is a 5-inch binding in half. Of course, it's 2.5 each way, but it's a 5-inch. So I need to have an overlap between the two ends of my binding when they come back together of 5 inches so that I can do that final join. Now, I'm not going to take you through every single little step because I've done that before and there's a million places you can see it. When you're done attaching all that binding, all you have to do is turn it. You'll have this lovely finished edge. Turn the corners carefully so that you get a nice little mitered corner like that. And then you tuck it all behind and pin it, and you can run an invisible seam, you can run a visible seam. Just run a seam around the edge that looks tidy on the front and catches your binding on the back. And then you're done. I've come all the way around. This is going to be, I haven't quite gotten to the end here because I want to make sure I leave room to do this join. Now here's the beginning of the binding, and I want a 5-inch overlap. So I'm going to cut this one here, and then I'm going to take these 2 pieces of binding out and turn them at the angle like I had before, and do a diagonal seam, and it should be perfect. Now if you get them turned the wrong way, it won't be, but if you get them turned the right way, it will be. Now if you do it correctly, it'll look like a massive confusion, but I'm trying to do this one-handed. But when you turn it, you should end up, now I'm going to tidy this up and cut off that bulk, but you should end up with a nice join that is exactly the right length and doesn't have a big twist in the middle. I've had to redo them before. So what I did this time was I clipped the two corners where I was going to sew my seam, and then with just the clips in place, I turned it to see if I had it right, and you'll find out. All right, I think it's done. I can't decide if I'm going to give this one away to the NICU or keep it myself because it's my first color wash, and to me that's kind of important. I don't know if, we'll see. It would just have to be something over the back of the couch because it's not big enough for an adult to do anything with, but I'm very pleased. I'm not crazy about that border, the binding. It's all right. It is kind of pretty against the blues. And I guess that's one difficulty with a color wash quilt is what do you find that is a good binding for all the colors of the rainbow? You know, maybe a white or a black. So there it is. I love just a close-up look at the golds, just all of those different types of golds. This is a wonderful, wonderful thing to do if you have just a big yarn stash of so many different scraps and pieces and fabrics that you have all the colors you need. All right, thank you for joining me. Bye-bye.